I feel lonely with every step that I take.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name's Nick and this is Idaho Up, and today we're going to be doing an install video on the OG, the original garage fairing. As you can see, the fairing's already installed on my motorcycle, but I just wanted to do a quick ride to ensure I wasn't having any buffering issues prior to getting into the install portion of the video. And I'm happy to report that I had no issues at all. I rode it through the city for a while, and then I rode it on a mountain loop, and I also rode it on the interstate. And the interstate speed limit here in Idaho is 80 miles per hour, and I had no issues at all. So far I'm happy, but maybe later on I'll do more of a long-term review. I do have a couple issues with the fairing that I'll explain in the video, but I also found an unexpected feature, well, maybe the better word is benefit to having this fairing, that I'll also show you at the end of the video, and I think some of you are really going to like it. And last but not least, I have some good news on a trip that I'm going to take later on in the summer, and I'll explain the details of that as well. The short story is that I decided I wanted to do more than just install videos, so I planned a motorcycle trip that I know I'm going to have a lot of fun on, and I want you to join me for the ride. Now hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out, and let's get into this install.
Well, it makes me lose my mind, but I don't get it why.
If you have the Harley-Davidson quick release windshield like I do, go ahead and remove that now. Now I got the complete original garage fairing kit, which includes the installation of a new headlight. Because I'm messing with electrical, I've got to disconnect the negative battery terminal. You'll find that under this cover. But if you didn't get the whole kit and you're just doing the fairing, you can skip this step. After you disconnect the cable, make sure you tuck it away somewhere nice so it doesn't come back and hit that negative terminal and cause a spark. Now remove the bezel from the headlight assembly by backing out the screw located on the bottom. It's a good idea to put a shot blanket on the front fender so you don't drop a tool during this process and dent it. From here you're going to use a large Allen key to back out the bolt that attaches the headlight mounting block. Now you're going to remove the bolt that attaches the mounting block to the headlight assembly. But word to the wise, go ahead and crack this loose prior to taking the mounting block off. It makes it a lot easier and you won't struggle like I am. From here, just pop out the Harley-Davidson headlight from the headlight assembly and you can unplug it from inside. Now the kit comes with the new headlight assembly, so I'm going to go ahead and cut these wires so that I can slip the Harley-Davidson headlight assembly off. You'll notice that I'm leaving plenty of wiring behind the stock plug, and that's because I'm going to solder it back on. So make sure you don't cut the wiring too close to the plug. It's kind of a tight squeeze, so practice some patience while you pull the wires out. You might have some rubber left behind from pulling it out. Just take a razor knife and clean up the wiring. Now in this frame right here, you see that I soldered most of the plug back on. I did 3 of the wires, but I did leave one so that I could show you how to solder it, just in case you've never done this before. The first thing you're going to do is get some heat shrink tubing and slip it over the wire prior to soldering them together. If you forget to do this, you're either going to have to cut the wire and start over or use some electrical tape to cover the exposed wire. From here you can use some wire strippers to strip back both ends of the wires, exposing the metal so that you can solder them together. After exposing the wires, I like to feather them out on both ends and then twist them together. This makes it easier when I'm soldering because the wires stay connected.
spirit ever denied. No matter what you try to do, you can't deny.
Now just get some solder and a soldering gun and solder the wires together. Just make sure your heat shrink tubing is pushed back as far as it'll go on the wire so that as the wire gets hot, it doesn't shrink down. It's really irritating when this happens because if it shrinks down too much, you have to cut the wire in order to get a new piece of heat shrink tubing on it.
Need a healing. Let the Spirit be your guide. And when your heart pours out your blessings, then your people, need a healing. Let the Spirit be your guide. And when your heart pours out your blessings, then your people
Now just let it cool down for a second before you try to slip the heat shrink tubing over it.
And what the people choose ain't really up to you. Action's always fun.
From here, just grab a heat gun and heat up that heat shrink tubing and it'll shrink down and cover that exposed wire.
No matter what you try to do, you can't deny the truth.
One thing I want to point out that I learned while making this video is that shop blankets tend to heat up really quick when exposed to a heat gun. Wouldn't take much to start a fire, so be careful if you're using one of these around a shop blanket. The last thing I like to do is take some electrical tape and put it around all the wires, just because I feel like it'll give them all a little more strength. As a side note, all of these soldering tools are relatively inexpensive and it's really not hard to solder, so don't be scared to try. Now we're moving on to mounting the aftermarket original garage headlight mounting block, and I'll tell you that the bolts that came with the kit were thicker than the stock bolts, so I did have to drill out the hole in order to accommodate those bolts. I would have used the stock bolts, but they weren't long enough to accommodate the new mounting block, and I thought this was an odd choice for a manufacturer. But I've learned that manufacturers typically do things for a reason, and I have a feeling those thicker bolts they've tested and they hold the fairing on better. So I'd rather drill this hole than find out later that my fairing came off because the bolt was too small to hold it. After all, this was in the directions, and on that note, you're also going to need a 27/64 inch or a 7/16 inch metal drill bit to drill this hole. I didn't have one, so I had to purchase one of those as well, and I just wanted to give you a heads up so you didn't run into the same problem.
Around your land, but by and by the stones will crumble down. Spend your life for what it's worth, but one day
Next to the hole, you'll find a little pin on the lower triple tree that needs to be removed. This pin did insert into the stock headlight mounting block, but it'll obstruct the new block, so it's got to go. This little cable clip has to go too because it'll obstruct the new mounting hardware for the new fairing. Now we're loosening the mounting bolts for the risers. Keep in mind that I'm not going to put Loctite back on these like I did when I installed them originally, because I'm fairly confident that the lock washers will hold them into place, but I am going to keep an eye on them for a while just in case. Now I'm cleaning it up a little prior to putting on the new fairing, just because it's easier to get to right now. Now finally the prep work's done and we can get to installing the new fairing. First we're going to start by slipping on the bracket that holds the upper portion of the fairing on. So I initially pushed the bracket all the way back, and I started looking at it, and I could tell that the back edges of the bracket were going to rub on the neck of the motorcycle when I made a turn. So make sure you look out for this. I just pulled mine forward slightly and made sure there was enough clearance prior to tightening down the bolts. Torque spec on this is 30 to 40 foot-pounds. Now prior to moving on, just make sure you sit on the bike and ensure that your risers and everything are straight. You can also measure from your risers to the end of the bracket to make sure that's the same size so you can ensure that your fairing sits on the motorcycle straight. Now we can install the bottom fairing mount and the headlight mounting block. There's no torque spec on this, so it's just hand tight, and if needed you can use a rubber mallet to straighten out the headlight block. And now we're ready to hang the fairing on both the upper and lower bracket, and the first thing I'll point out are these two holes right here. Bolts go through these holes and they'll connect the upper portion of the fairing to the hooks shown here on both the left and right side. One thing I do want to point out is the bolts that are inside the fairing, don't touch those. They're already to factory spec and the directions say to leave them alone, so just leave them be. So at this point I'll go ahead and put some bolts through the upper portion of the fairing and we'll hang it, and then we'll put some through the lower portion and then we'll snug them all down. While I'm tightening these bolts down, I just want to take a minute and give you guys an update on some of the things I have planned for this channel going forward. First off, if you're enjoying this install video, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. Also, go check out my other install videos, because if this is your cup of tea, I think you'll enjoy those as well. If install videos aren't your flavor, then I did want to let you know that I'm in the process of planning a trip to the Tail of the Dragon. I will admit that I'm not going to ride my bike there, I'm going to trailer it with my Jeep. I know that's sacrilege, but come on, I live in Idaho, it's a long trip, and I don't want to be worn out before I get there. Plus, I'm going to have plenty of time there to get in some good rides. I'm also going to be sleeping out of my Jeep at a local campground and taking in the scenery, and I'm also going to be cooking some meals out of my Jeep. So if any of that sounds appealing to you, or you think you might be interested in that, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the trip. With that said, I'm also going to be doing some content on the Grand Sport you see in the background of this video, so if you like Corvettes or sports cars, make sure you tune in for those as well. Let's get back to this install video. Okay, now that the fairing's on, we're going to go ahead and clean it up a little, and then we're going to install the headlight, followed by the windshield. So I gotta be honest here, I think the Harley-Davidson headlight assembly is of much better quality than this OG headlight assembly. You can tell by looking inside of it right now that the paint's already starting to bubble up, and I can tell you that the metal feels a lot more flimsy than the HD metal. With that said, all the flaws are on the inside of the light, so I'm okay with it for now, but we'll see how it stands up in the long run. As you can tell here, putting the headlight assembly together isn't that hard. You just drop in that metal spacing ring and line it up with the notches, and then you plug in your headlight, drop it in, and then secure it with the headlight bezel. I will tell you that the headlight seems to be of much better quality than the headlight assembly itself, and I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. We'll see how it operates down the road. As you can tell, the plugs don't exactly seat fully, so I went ahead and got some electrical tape and wrapped it around it just to ensure that they didn't come apart. Once you got the light situated and the bezel on, just go ahead and tighten it down with the screw and everything will stay in place. I do recommend that you use a little Loctite just so it doesn't rattle loose.
I guess I go home alone again tonight, and I'll cry till I feel alright. I get my mojo working once more. Got the ain't got no love alone the blues again. Hey, hear what I say, ain't got me no love. Sometimes I like to be by myself, but I don't like to put my love on the shelf. But sometimes love hurts, it sure is fun. I got the ain't got no love alone.
Now I'm just taking some electrical tape and covering up the wires we soldered earlier just so we have a more clean end look.
Got me no love. Hey, hear what I say, I'm alone again.
Now we can plug in our light and run the bolt through the headlight assembly and the headlight mounting block. Now just go ahead and tighten down the bolt until you have enough tension on it that the headlight assembly will hold itself up while you're adjusting it.
I feel lonely with every step that I take. I don't feel good.
Now just make sure the headlight isn't rubbing on the fairing and you can tighten the bolt down. It's handy to use a set of combination wrenches because while you're tightening it, you can adjust the light just by pushing down on one or pulling up on the other.
Wonder if I'm the only one who sees what they say it takes to be a man and what a man can be. It's all lies. It's all
Again, we're just going to clean it up before we put on the windshield. At this point, we're done with all the electrical work, so you can go ahead and reconnect your negative battery terminal.
It's all so dull. So why don't you take it all? Take it away from me. 'Cause someday I'll leave this place you live cities. Don't run away. Don't run away. Well, it makes me lose my mind, but I don't get it why everybody's moving so fast and I'm not even blinking without.
Okay, we're on the home stretch, and I just want to point out that these brackets that hold the windshield have an angle on them, and that angle should follow the curvature of the windshield. So keep that in mind while you're installing them. Let's get started by just installing these 4 rubber grommets inside the windshield itself.
So why don't you take it all? Take it away from me. Someday I'll leave this place you live cities.
So on the bottom 2 holes of the windshield, you're going to use the longer screw and the countersunk washer on the front side of the windshield. And on the back side of the windshield, you're going to use the spacer and the rivet nut to attach it to the fairing. It's going to look something like this. The idea here is that as you tighten down on the screw, the rivet nut will tighten down on itself and cause a bulge in the middle, which will secure it to the bottom portion of the fairing. In the top holes, you'll use the smaller screw with the countersunk washer, and it'll screw right into the billet arm. The billet arm will bolt into the mounting metal on the inside of the fairing, and as you'll notice, there is some adjustability so that when you put the windshield on, you can line everything up.
So why don't you take it all?
At this point, you're going to tighten down all the bolts just slightly, just enough so that you can move them around and they'll stay where you want them. There is a torque spec on this, but don't torque them down just yet.
Don't run away. Don't
Now we can finally put the windshield on. You'll notice that I pre-installed the bottom 2 holes like I showed you earlier, except this time I did include some Loctite on the threads. All we're going to do is flex the windshield a little and line up those rivet nuts with the holes on the fairing and slip it in. It should hold the windshield on while you get the billet arms connected, but make sure you don't walk away from it too far because it could potentially fall and scratch the windshield. After that, you can put some thread lock on the smaller screws, push them through the top holes on the windshield, and screw them into the billet arm. But don't screw them all the way down at this point. Just kind of put them in so you're confident that they're not going to fall out.
Raise your children tall and proud. Chase away the lightning clouds until you finally get old and gray.
And finally, you can adjust your windshield to the angle that you want it at. And I wanted mine pushed as far forward as possible, kind of vertical, but without the billet arms rubbing against the fairing itself. When you're satisfied with the position of the windshield, just tighten the billet arms down to 15 foot-pounds. And last but not least, go ahead and tighten down the windshield screws, but be careful here. I have cracked a window like this before in the past just by simply torquing it down too hard. This is why I use Loctite on these, so that I feel comfortable going a little looser. Alright guys, there it is. The fairing is on. It looks pretty good. I'm going to give you a quick startup of the bike right now, but I do have a complaint on the fairing. Not necessarily how it looks, but there is a mounting issue that I don't like. But let's give it a startup real quick so you can check out the light. Make sure I'm in neutral. Okay, so I think it looks really good. I think it completely changed the bike. Kind of looks how I want it, looks like how I want it to look now. I got the sissy bar off right now, but you can pop that on. It's the Harley quick disconnect sissy bar. So here's the mounting issue I'm talking about. Like these ones up here at the top that mount to the windshield, they look good. They like have a nice angle on them. But if you look at the ones down there, they're kind of not really lined up straight, and I don't know how I feel about it because I got an OCD streak. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's gonna stay on. It's pretty solid, but if that really bothers me later on, I'll probably just go to the hardware store and find something that will just make that look a little cleaner. But other than that, I think it's great. As far as sitting on the bike, I'll jump on it real fast. The windshield, I'm 5'10", and the windshield just straight across is probably hitting the bottom of my nose. And you can adjust the angle of the windshield forward and backwards, but that's kind of where it's sitting on me. And I like it. I think it's perfect. So we'll see how it is when I ride it. I'm going to do a loop with it and just see how it feels, and then we'll let you know how that goes. So guys, I nearly forgot to tell you what one of my favorite benefits to this fairing is. So let me show you. So if you're like me, 90% of the time when you're out riding, you've got a ball cap with you. And that's because when you take off your helmet, you want something else to put on. And I've always struggled with where I'm going to put my hat without deforming it, unless I'm running a set of bags. But this original garage fairing has solved that issue for me, because as you can see, there's a nice little spot right inside the fairing to put your hat where it won't get deformed. And I can tell you, you can do 80 plus miles per hour and your hat will not move from that spot. It's a super nice benefit. I also want to announce that I'm in the process of creating a website called idahoupmoto.com where you can get a hat just like this one. Keep in mind this one's been through the ringer. They look a lot better brand new. And also keep in mind that the site's still under construction, so you probably can't get one just yet. But keep an eye on it. If you want to support the channel, check back later and buy a hat. That's it for this one. I hope the video was helpful. This is Nick with Idaho Up, and until next time, keep up.